Did you know that every day 4 to 7 children lose their life to child abuse or neglect? The United States has one of the worst records amongst other nations when it comes to children dying from abuse and neglect. For our group project, our task was to raise awareness for child abuse and neglect in the adoptive and foster care system. We got the privilege to work alongside Indiana Foster and Adoptive Parents Organization, which was founded by CEO Christy Cundiff. Indiana Foster and Adoptive Parents, better known as IFAP, is an organization that started out as a Facebook group where foster and adoptive parents in Indiana could come to network, share their stories, and get support. Eventually, it grew into the organization it is now. Instead of being a community for people to go and share their stories and get support, IFAP is now known as a resource and advocacy for children in the foster care system. The statistics of child abuse and neglect in Indiana and in the United States as a whole continues to grow. Organizations like IFAP are trying to decrease those statistics on a daily basis while serving as a lending hand to those in need. IFAP not only helps fight against child abuse and neglect, find good homes for children in the foster care system, but they also have resources where foster children can come in and get clothes, backpacks, shoes, beds, etc. We had the pleasure of being able to volunteer at their Resource for Clothing event, which is located in Terre Haute, Indiana. Like I stated earlier, as a group, we were also in charge of planning and executing the annual Child Abuse Awareness event in Terre Haute. The Child Abuse Awareness event is an event brought to the public that is held to spread awareness about the inclining rates of child abuse and neglect of those children in the foster care system. Our group was in charge of preparing and creating the event, as well as documenting what we did for our class.
So for this part of the presentation, we were able to go as a group to the clothing closet, and most of us got to go together in the clothing closet, but there were a couple of us that didn't go. So Michaela, Katie, and I were in a group together, so we had this experience that was just a little different than Rabina and Thomas's. We also were able to discover new info that Christy informed us on foster families and child abuse that takes place throughout Indiana. Christy showed us how the clothing closet was sectioned off and how an individual can donate their clothes to the actual place itself, the church that it's taken place in. It took us about, I would say, 3 hours each to gently fold used clothes and separate the sizes, and they were sectioned off from like baby to little boys and little girls, But the interesting thing was when we first walked in, there were backpacks, and she told us that she filled these backpacks up with like clothes and stuff so that they're able to take a backpack home as well for school. So that was really interesting. We also got to hear stories about the different children that suffered through the child abuse or who have gone through child abuse, and some of the stories were sad, especially the ones where we hear the deaths about. And then for our actual volunteer experience for the main event, it didn't go as planned due to the pandemic. The event basically wasn't what we had expected, and that's okay, so we had to accommodate. So we ended up having something called an e-event, and this was an electronic event that took place on any social media platform to be able to get the message out to all friends and family. We were able to post information on child abuse in IFAP, mainly child abuse, but we wanted to inform to the different individuals on educating on how child abuse is taken in the state of Indiana and advocate those who do not know much about it. We found that sharing these messages, we were able to get donations, and we were able to share with people we didn't even know, and the hashtags were able to be presented throughout different social medias to help us gain more of a following.
Hello, my name is Rabina Way, and I will be discussing part 2 of our presentation. My group and I had the pleasure to sit down with Christy Cundiff for an interview and for input on planning the Child Abuse Awareness event. During the interview, we were able to learn a little bit more about Christy and the IFAAP organization. When we arrived for our interview, Christy had forgotten her keys to the building. She quickly came up with the alternative of going to the subway up the street to interview. I noticed when we first came in, the employees greeted Christy by her name. Being a familiar face in the community showed that she spent a lot of time at the clothing closet. When we sat down to talk, Christy shared real stories of some of the children the system had failed. She also shared her own personal stories she experienced. The one that stood out was the story of her making it back just in time for her grandchild to be delivered. She had gone out of town for a conference and was able to catch a last-minute flight. You can tell how important being a parent is to Christy. Almost missing such a monumental moment in her daughter's life because of what she does shows her dedication to her organization as well as her dedication to the children and families she helps. From the interview, you could tell how important child abuse awareness is to Christy. This brought slight pressure, but my team and I had planned to execute this event to the best of our ability. We were planning to have different activities, things to give away, and different speakers for the event. We also plan to share many facts and statistics with the attendees of the event. 3 main people we were told to look for were educators, advocates, and supporters of child abuse awareness. People who fell into the category would have been more likely to support us. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, we were unable to host the event. Due to restrictions put on us by COVID-19, an alternative event was put in place. The e-event was a creative idea we believe was effective. This event allowed for people outside of Terre Haute to be able to attend. It also allowed for this information to be shared beyond the time the event was going to be held. Just as we had planned, facts and statistics were still shared with people at the event. The hashtags created showed recognition to child abuse awareness as well as the IFAAP. Although face-to-face meetings allow for a more personal form of contact, the online solution still allowed for people to learn more about child abuse awareness. Therefore, our overall goal was accomplished. The takeaway from this experience allowed us to bring attention to a very important issue. This is extremely important for the children in our state and other states to have people who have a voice for them. This situation also taught us how to deal with a crisis situation in an organization. For example, it's almost as if our class was the organization and we had an event to plan. When crisis occurs, simply canceling or postponing an event is not always the best solution. An effective alternative could sometimes make up for your original plans.
Analysis and recommendations. The takeaway. During our time planning for the awareness event, we took a deeper look into IFAT to see what we could take away from the organization. First, the organization have good relationships in the community that helps the business. Second, decision making. Decision making plays a vital role in the everyday operation, planning on what and where the organization should go. Then we have a strong leadership. Christy is a strong leadership. She has relationships with everybody in the community, and she holds IFAP up in everything it stands for. Now the recommendations that we have for the organization. More help for the day-to-day operations. We feel like Chrissy shouldn't have the bigger role, just like handle everything by herself. She needs more help to plan and make things shake. And we also think that she just deserves a bigger space because every day her clothing closet is expanding and growing. Now it's on to concepts. Our first concept is the chaos theory. The individual has to start somewhere or create and develop an organization. The chaos is the idea of merely having the ordering or the ordering arising out of relative disorder. So basically saying like out of the structure, something still possibly chaotic might happen. Then we have the relationship. So organizations such as IFAP ran into problems that they cannot solve on their own. So IFAP has to have those outside relationships. Like Christy has a relationship with Professor Rascone, and she makes these different relationships outside of her own bubble to make the organization strive and to be better. From relationships, we have conflict. Now, conflict has been defined as the intersection of independent people who pursue incompatible goals and the interface from one another in achieving those goals. Even like during everything with all that's going on, we had conflict with trying to plan the events and things like that. And we have leadership and decision making as our last two. For leadership and kind of leadership that took place between the organizations we drove through was the contingency approach. So, like, contingency approach assumes the leadership is best understood by addressing the essential feature of both the lesser and the context, especially on how they match up. You have decision making. When it comes to decision making as different organization, it can cause a havoc in individuals in the organization that does not agreement of some kind. So, like, basically, Chrissy had to make all the decisions and have the final say so on what she wanted IFAP to look like, what she wanted it to do, how she wanted certain events to be ran. Chrissy basically had the final say doing all that because she's the leader of all of the organization.
Our overall experience working with Christy was very educational. She taught us about how being a good foster parent can have a huge impact on a child's life. We learned the impact IFAP has within the community and the state. Volunteering was one of the highlights of this experience. We all noticed that Christy gets so many donations that she is running out of space at the clothing closet. During our interview with Christy, she told us a lot of different stories of real children from Indiana that have died from abuse and neglect. Her telling us these stories helped us realize why having the child abuse prevention event was important. It's important to get the community educated on what children go through and what we can do to help prevent it. Through our experience working with Christy, we were able to relate our experiences back to certain course concepts. There are many concepts that we could have chosen from, however, chaos theory, relationships, conflict, leadership, and decision making were the most prominent. Because of our experiences with this project, we have a better understanding of what these concepts mean and how to apply them. Thank you for listening to our presentation, and we hope you enjoyed it.